KHTS in beautiful downtown Newhall, California. It's time once again for Families in Action. Families in Action is brought to you each Monday at this time by Action Family Counseling, alcohol and drug counseling for teens and adults, and by the Action Family Foundation. And by KHTS AM 1220, your hometown station. Hello, I'm your co-host, Mike Doherty. And now, here's the man with the most. Here's your host, Cary, I'd rather be riding my Harley, Quashen.
I really would, Mike. It's been one of those kind of mornings, I'll tell you that. I would rather be anything than what I dealt with this morning. Just a quick one, my refrigerator broke, and from 8 to 11, I was dealing with the warranty people finally to get somebody to approve to fix it today.
No fun.
8 to 3 hours after 2 hang-ups after an hour.
And that's how you started your day?
That's how I started my day, from 8 a.m. to 11. So it's been a crazy day. And how's your weekend? You see, it's kind of crazy because we work. I run all the drug treatment programs, and we both work over at Henry Mayo in the behavioral health unit. So, which is really hectic. So when we see each other during the week, it's usually at the behavioral health unit.
Yeah, and by the way, talk about hectic. We're full over there.
I know.
What a weekend.
And things can go from A to Z there really quickly.
Sure can.
So, and then we don't really speak until Monday. How's everything with you?
Wonderful. It was a wonderful weekend. And my wife and I finally got our house renovated. So we were able to actually sit there this weekend and kind of go, and enjoy things.
Yeah, it must be, because that's crazy, huh? That's crazy.
It was
making
crazier
stuff.
than it should have been, yes.
Yeah, so, in the world of treatment, I was looking at Facebook, and I was checking out Simi Valley, where we lost another one, another overdose, and I don't know much more about it, but I do know that there was a lot of stuff going on there about somebody that had passed away, so I wish I had more information. But gosh, Mike, if the amount of people that are dying right now, it's a national epidemic. It came from the White House. Last week there was a big press release. You have it. I have it. It's right here somewhere. But it's something like 140-something deaths a day. 140-something deaths a day.
Actually, it's a slightly less than that, but not much, Cary. It's 120 drug overdoses. These are deaths per day in the U.S., with more than half of them, from heroin and prescription painkillers. Now, I did the math on that really quick.
120-something a day.
Now, there are people sitting out there that may say, well, 120 is not a big number. Well, listen to this. When you think of it this way, it gets
frightening number to me.
Yeah, well, it should be. That's 3,600 deaths per month, and that's for over 43,000 deaths per year.
So over 43,000 of our youngsters. These are youngsters when it comes to the opiates, really. Over 43,000 of our youngsters are losing their life every year to drugs. And this is it's crazy. It's actually past car crashes. For the first, it's just insane. And I'll tell you, it's one of the most preventable deaths there is. It's drug overdoses. So it's really, to me, it's disgusting. And I've been screaming for the last plus over 5 years, saying that the heroin and the opiate explosion epidemic, I've been saying for over 5 years, it's going to be worse than it's ever been. It's going to be worse than the 70s, and now everybody's saying, oh my God, what happened? It's worse than it's ever been.
You called it.
Yeah, well, it was. We work in treatment.
Yeah, exactly.
We've been seeing it coming. It's not been creeping up. It's been jumping up in our faces.
Right. Now, Cary, before we got a couple of more things to tell people about from the action file.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I just wanted to mention that on today's show we're going to be talking about codependency, which really kind of brings us to week 3 of talking about people other than the actual addict.
Right.
But before we get into all of that, let's lighten it up just a tad. Today, Monday, August the 3rd, is National Watermelon Day. One of my faves.
You like that too?
I love it. I can do that. I can
have some of that. Yes. There you go.
And so that if you're at lunch, hey, order a slice of watermelon or have one this evening. You know those little watermelons they have in the store? Those are really good.
National Watermelon Day. Pretty cool stuff.
Love it. That's one of the great things about summer. And did you know, now, Cary, I know you're old enough to remember this. Way back in 1963, the Beatles held their final performance at the Cavern Club in Liverpool. They went on to become fairly famous, didn't they?
You know what? That's funny because you mentioned that now. And I remember when I was probably right around that age, my uncle had it on TV, and I was watching that show. So it was pretty amazing. I actually remember that scene. I was watching all the people screaming and yelling. I couldn't figure out how somebody would scream and yell at somebody singing songs. I was young, so it was kind of trippy.
The Beatles phenomenon. Hey, real quick, we just have like a minute left before we go to break, but medical marijuana users increasingly turning to vaping devices.
It's getting pretty scary because there's some major vaping devices now that they could put all kinds of different drugs into. I mean, they're smoking everything in those vapors now. So what we thought, well, we didn't think, but what people were thinking were kind of, not dangerous, are extremely dangerous now. Let's go ahead and take a break. This is Families in Action on our hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. We're coming right back. Welcome back to Families in Action on our hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen, along with my co-host Michael Duarte. And we're talking about codependency and all that, but I'm kind of sidetracking for a minute, only because when I think about the epidemic we're having right now with the opiates, the heroin, and the pills, and then I look over on Facebook and I see we lost somebody else in Simi Valley this weekend from an overdose of opiates, and then I think 123 a day. We're losing 123 people a day in this country from drug overdoses. So what does that mean when we start our show at 12 o'clock and we end at 1, 5 people loses their lives?
Wow.
Just like
that puts it in good perspective, doesn't it?
So by the time we start our show to the time we end our show, 5 young people loses their lives here in this country. And that's just people that loses their lives.
In this country.
That's not people that just overdoses. So you're talking over 43,000 people a year. You don't think we're having an epidemic? The White House does. And I'll tell you what it is. It starts, they say it's heroin, but when it comes right down to it, the biggest culprit is the pills. It's the opioids. It's the Oxycontins. It's the Vicodins. It's those pills that are what's causing the heroin epidemic. Because 90%, I wouldn't say 90%, but a huge percentage of people that are addicted to heroin started because they got addicted to pills. So this is one of the most preventable deaths that you can imagine.
And here you're talking about young people whose brains haven't fully developed, and we're going to be talking about that in our next show. But the teen brain is sitting there trying to make a decision about something that is actually could be life or death.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's go ahead. Let's get high.
We lost over 1 person already. 1 person died since we've been on the air.
Isn't that amazing?
At least
people don't think of that.
1 person died since we've been on the air today.
And the sad thing about the marijuana users turning to vaping, one of the reasons...
We're going now to vaping. Okay, but I just want to say that the opiates... Listen, guys, if you're on any kind of opioids, and what you got to understand is this. We're losing, I'm going to say it again, 43,000 people a year, 5 an hour, to overdoses. The more you use, the more your body builds up a tolerance. Now, what you need to know is it's not so much your body that's building up this tolerance, it's your mind. So your mind thinks that it needs more, but your body can't hang. And the most frightening thing about these drug overdoses is, here's what I'm seeing, and this is really what I want to get out there, is the people that we seem to be losing are people that have been trying to stay sober.
Really?
Meaning that thing that they build up, that it's not there anymore. So when they start using after being clean for a month or so, their mind says, I need a little bit more to feel that buzz, but their body can't hang.
You just reminded me of something, Cary, and you're going to remember this as soon as I start mentioning it. And I think this was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. You told me, because you keep some of these in your cell phone, but you told me that there was a death of a young person who had completed the action program. They were clean and sober, and they went out with some friends, and he decided that he was going to get high just one more time.
Right.
And guess what happened?
You know how many just one more times?
He died.
I've been doing this 30-something years. Do you know how many more one more times that I've dealt with? And the problem is, again, we're so used to what we used before we stopped. And what that means is our body's built up a resistance. Once you stop using for a while, that resistance is gone. So you put more drugs in your body can't hang, and you lose your life. So be careful always, but especially if you haven't used it in a while. And I don't believe in what is that? Hey, be careful what you use. I believe don't use at all.
No kidding.
But hey, if you're going to do it, you really better pay attention to your body and what your body will talk to you too.
We have more from the action file. After 2 die at a RAV from apparent overdoses, supervisors are demanding a probe. Apparently, there was an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old, both women.
This weekend.
Died, I believe it was, this Saturday, died at the Hard Summer Music Festival at the Fairplex in Pomona.
Right.
And they're using ecstasy. That's the big thing. Now, what happens with ecstasy? That heats up your body, doesn't it? And here it is, like in the hundreds out there.
Yeah, it heats up your body. It's kind of like a mixture of crystal meth and acid and all kinds of stuff together. And when the weather is extremely hot, it can really do even extra damage. And when you're in a rave, you got to think there's thousands of people dancing and music and heat, and it's just going to your body temperature just goes through the ceiling.
Listen to these numbers. Last year, attendance at this festival was 40,000 people per day. This year's event expanded to 65,000 people a day. It's considered the biggest music festival of its kind in Los Angeles County.
And very deadly.
Apparently.
Whenever you put kids or young people together and you have loud music, which is great. I mean, I'm not against loud music, have fun. But you have loud music, substance or drugs and alcohol, that's a recipe for disaster. That's a prescription for huge trouble. And it's not surprising that you hear 2 people died. And I was talking to somebody who said, "Whoa, there were 60,000 people and 2 people died." 2 people lost their lives. That's horrible.
It is.
Any way you look at it.
Yeah, you can't look at that and say, but there are 65,000 people there. Big deal. Oh, it is a very big deal. What if it was your family member that died? It'd be a big deal for you.
And today already, since we've been on this show, we've lost over 1 person.
That's right.
Almost 2 already.
That's right.
Just sitting here.
Talking.
And we're just talking opiates now. What about benzos? One of the most prescribed drug in the country is the Xanax and the Valiums and those kind of Ativan. We're losing people to that every day. In fact, that's one of the hardest drugs to detox over alcohol, besides alcohol, because it's a long-term drug. It stays in your body longer. So there's some really frightening stuff out there, and if you don't pay attention to yourself and what you're putting in your body, it's a recipe for big trouble.
And you mention this a lot. You talk about the first contract that people break with themselves, and that's when they start smoking.
Right.
And I happen to see a picture just the other day of a set of healthy lungs and a set of lungs from somebody that had only been smoking for like 6 months. Do you know that the unhealthy 6-month smoker, the lungs were totally black?
I'm sure.
Disgust. Why would you do that? And my mother died of COPD, and she asked me, she said, "How did this happen so fast?" And I said, "Mom, this is a lifetime."
Yeah, my mother, I was talking to somebody this weekend too about smoking kids. I was up at the ranch dealing with the adolescents. I was hanging out with them. We were talking about cancer, and they said, "How's your mom?" I said, "She died 4 years ago." And I was with her in the doctor's office when she looked at the doctor and said, "Doc, how did this happen? How did I get this cancer?" You know what he said? He said, "Esther," that was her name. "It says it on the box." What a statement. Can you imagine that?
You and I had a strange experience. Your mother passed away a year to the day of my mother's passing, also from smoking.
That's right.
So we can speak firsthand.
That's right. So, hey, on that note, this is Families in Action on our hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.